Welcome to the SEO Insider with your host, Seth Price, founder of Blue Shark, taking you inside the world of legal marketing and all things digital.
We're thrilled to have Tom Martin here, the founder of Converse Digital. He is the king of turning conversations into customers. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you. Good to be here.
So talk to me. It's a great, I mean, it's what everybody is trying to do, right? Talk is cheap. But we need customers. How do you do that?
I mean, what we really mean by that is, when I grew up in I grew up in the ad agency world, right? You're a lawyer. I was an ad agency guy, but we were both.
You're like Draper.
I did not. I wish I did. My first boss in college. My first boss professionally was a New York ad guy back during those times. And so I remember asking him, like, is it really what they said it was? And he said, yeah, it was. So what it was worth. It wasn't like that when I got into advertising.
Well, before we talk about you, I'll give you so I grew up on 23rd and 1st, pretty close to Madison Avenue. And one of my first jobs when I left the law firm to become a digital marketer, or to become part of the .com craze. I didn't even know what digital marketing was, but I joined the first startup that I landed at was what it called Free Ride. That was a bunch of ad agency guys. One of the sort of principles behind it was an ad guy, old time, who was responsible for Joe Camel. And yeah, like a lot of people may have taken credit for it, but I looked him up. There was some nexus. And he would hold his meetings at a luxury condo 10 blocks away from the office to be creative. So we would when you had a meeting with him, you'd schlep out of the office, down, up the elevator to his luxury condo, where you would sit there and brainstorm in a much more laid back environment.
Yeah, I just wanted the bar cart, really. That's all I cared for. Which now that I have my own agency, I have a bar, just bar. I didn't even stop with a cart. I just put a whole damn bar in the building. It was much easier.
Gotcha.
We do a lot of work in the liquor space, so it makes sense that we should have a lot of alcohol.
So I digress. Talk to me about the core premise of what you guys do.
For us, it was. I remember starting out in biz dev in the ad agency business back. This is pre-internet. And you would send mailers and you'd call people and you'd send letters and you'd do these agency pitches, RFPs and stuff like that. And nobody ever wanted. I remember I would cold call and stuff, and nobody ever wanted to talk to you. You were always interrupting them and so forth. And it just sort of dawned on me after Katrina hit, and I kind of, because I'm in New Orleans and it wiped out our agency. And kind of occurred to me, like, there has to be a better way of doing this. And so I kind of set out on a quest, which got me to a place where I'm today, which is if you spend less time selling and more time just conversing, just trying to build relationships with people, it's kind of like a big flywheel. It takes a lot of work to get it spun up, but once it's spun up, it's pretty easy to keep it going. It tends to keep throwing off leads. And
I'm smiling ear to ear because essentially, I as the accidental agency owner, I didn't have your playbook, but I wish I did, in the sense that I started speaking at conferences just because I was cheap and didn't want to pay to go, and I didn't even have an agency. And then, if you speak, you don't pay. And as the agency started, and as my co-pilot, who I've been along for the ride, he sits at home keeping the trains running. He's like, just keep going. The stuff the guy you met 3 years ago. Yeah. He just called you the other day. And like every year that wheel is going faster. And I'd like to think that we've never sold. We just sort of educate, talk, we're there. And that, if people do business with who they know, like, and trust, that I like that way. So you're selling to the choir here.
Yeah. To me, it just was always, you grew up with that whole Glenn Ross, always be closing bullshit. Oops, shit. Sorry. Maybe I shouldn't say that on your podcast. I don't know. Anyways. And I always laughed because I always thought it was horrible. And I never found those kind of salespeople. I never really wanted to be around those kind of people. I never really bought things from those kind of people. They usually just annoyed me. But I've always changed it to, always be connecting, and that's what I always try to do is, I'm like you, I speak at the conferences because it's free and I get to go to a conference and, people think you're smart if you stand on a stage, even if you're a complete moron.
But they also want to talk to you, and like half the networking goes on behind in the green room, and the people talking to you after. I mean, it's just that's how life goes on.
Absolutely. Well, it gets you, it gets you out there. I think the biggest mistake, at least in the ad agency business, and maybe in the legal marketing, it's the same way. You would know more than me, is everybody buys into this Google juice myth that you got to keep all your content, all your thinking on your website, drive people to your website, get your web pages ranked, et cetera, et cetera. And I just never bought into that. I was all about spread my content all over the internet. I probably write and publish and speak more for other people than I do myself. And, it's because what I figured out early on was, as one single little website, I can only get so much Google juice. I mean, it just is what it is, depending on what you're competing for. But there were these big media publishing sites that, were huge, like Content Marketing World or Copyblogger, or these big sites. And if I could get a guest post on their website, like I couldn't get to page one, but that post on their site could.
Absolutely.
And so I started spreading stuff all over the place. And I was like, this is awesome, because now when you search certain terms on Google, out of 10 listings, 6, 8 of them are me. They're my content, either on my site or someone else's, or someone writing about me, right? Or writing about what I'm talking about. And it's like, dude, that's sweet. When you got 8 out of the top 10.
Now, like it's funny because we come from the other direction, and there are times when we have 8 out of 10. But I would argue for local search, it's both. I'm not disagreeing with what you're saying.
Yeah.
But if you do need your property with your content on it, because Google needs to see you as that local destination, not a thought leader. So again, and that's also what's really important, because what gets somebody to the top of the mountain as a thought leader may not be the same thing that gets you there as a local service provider. But that said, what you're doing, unbeknownst to yourself or beknownst to yourself, is SEO. So one half of the game, if one half is content on your own site, the other half is authoritative links coming back in. Every time you get that is a link coming in, and Google saying, wow, if Huffington Post and, and Forbes and all these places are seeing you as the, marketing expert, and these links are coming back, not only will that drive your own site, but, and I also look at, are you playing around on Clubhouse at all?
And I downloaded it, and I just haven't had the time.
Yeah, agreed. And I built my own thing, and I had to. I got my own club, right? Once you do that, it's a little bit of a notch. At the time, it was a little competitive to get it. But what I found was, I won't take the time. I don't love it. One of my buddies loves it. But I go and I host a room once in a while. There are people there, but it would take a lot more effort than being invited to other people's rooms. Then you get their audience. And that's essentially been your philosophy. You could have done it either way. You could have created, you've been in the business 20 years. So if you created a destination site and made that your passion, but I always say people do what they love, and you clearly love the getting your stuff and get some sort of like energy or juice at it, literally, figuratively, both, personal juice as well as SEO juice, by putting your stuff out there. And it's just 2 different ways to go about it. But for your purposes where, hey, I know about you, I'm inviting you on this podcast, that probably wouldn't happen with just a destination, but rather, hey, this guy's everywhere. And that's what you want, right?
We don't, you bring up a good point. We don't really, we don't really have, gosh, I don't know if we have really any clients in New Orleans right now. Never really have, because my first agency, we had all New Orleans clients, and then Hurricane Katrina hit, and all those clients closed. And my philosophy of, as long as I have a phone and a laptop, I'm in business, failed miserably, because I was like, that's great, because I have no clients, and everybody in my biz dev database was basically at the New Orleans company. So I was like, okay, well, this isn't going to work. So when I started Converse Digital, 11 years ago, I very, very cautiously, or I shouldn't say cautious, I very purposely spent most of my time developing business outside of New Orleans. And so for me, that local thing is a little bit less relevant, just because we don't really have that. But it was all about getting known and getting clients outside of our market. But again, like you said, it's a strategy. It's what game do you want to play?
Right.
Play that game really well and be successful. But if I was a law firm or doctor or something, that dentist, something that relies on local people, yeah, obviously I got to win the other side of that, or that's not going to help me much.
No, I get it. Look, ironically, I have a similar thing because my law firm is in DC. I don't take a lot of clients in our region. And so we are the non-SEO'd site, in that I don't really care about local search. Everything's been through word of mouth, and and that's been our piece. We had a prior guest, the founder of Search Influence. He must be a neighbor of yours.
Oh yeah, Will.
Yeah. A good guy who I know sort of from the search world. He's one of the grand poobahs of PubCon, and, just a great guy. And it was interesting because we talked, just about a lot of the building widgets of agencies, but New Orleans has all its special benefits, but also sort of, you don't know when the next flood's coming. And so, and he similarly, first got hit there, but I think he was very heavily in the travel and leisure space. And that, again, we just saw that wasn't Katrina, that was COVID, but in legal, we haven't been hit, knock on wood, all that hard, in the sense that, people are doubling down online. But if you're doing fine dining or destination travel,
Yeah, we used to actually do a decent amount of tourism business, and we had a decent amount of tourism clients, and just so happened our liquor clients kind of took off, and you go where the money is, and thank God, because I've got a lot of friends that are still very much in that tourism space, and last March, April was not a good day to be in their world. Whereas, we were pretty good. Our client base is largely B2B and liquor, both of which continue to do quite well. Knock on wood.
Right.
I think at the end of the day, it's different ways of looking at it. But I mean, that's part of the game, right? If everybody's playing this version of SEO, and you can find a little tactic over here that gives you, an edge for even a little bit of time, okay, great. Eventually somebody will see your edge and they'll copy you, and then you got to find a new edge. And I mean, that's kind of the whole game, if you ask me.
Well, look, I get the conversations to customers for you. Talk to me about how you use that in the B2B world. Like you're talking, bring me an end user example. Not that I'm sure there are plenty of them, but just walk us through a little bit about how your philosophy plays out there.
It really plays out a little differently if we're talking to a business to consumer client or a business to business. The business to consumer client that tends to have a conversation that involves a lot of stuff around like social media and just community management. How do you do community management? How do you handle it? How do you measure it? What does success look like? And then how do you use that to draw? So we had a rum client, for instance, a dark spice rum. Not a lot of people drink dark spice rum. They're not familiar with it.
I enjoy it.
Yeah, it's really good. So, for them, their conversation was we would lead in social media with content that really wasn't about liquor necessarily. It was very inspirational. It was very much about their brand ethos, etc., which was super cool, and their brand story. And people would get into that, and they would share it, get involved with it. And they would like, wow, this is a cool brand. I want to invite it into my world. They would like the pages. Then we'd start to get them. And eventually they'd see the recipe content and the different things you could do with it and drinks, and you'd be like, oh, that's pretty cool. And it was like the old days of direct response, right? Like you'd nab them, you'd nurture them.
But right, because if you went straight with here's a recipe, but if you're like, but like I didn't, who knows, they needed spice rum when you get to the bar, what's gonna trigger that, and it's an emotive feel.
It's like business. We'd nurture them. We just nurture. To actually have people on the site, they would say like, they would be on, like, you would see them on the page saying, oh my God, well, I got in here for your content, but then I tried the product and the product's awesome. Now I really love all the drink recipes. It was just this circle of life kind of thing. B2B, it tends to be more like sales training. Like I'm doing a big workshop tomorrow for people in the B2B sales world to show them how I call it sell greatly. You are relationship first, transaction second. You're trying to have real conversations with people where you're not really talking about what you can sell them or what they can buy from you or whatever, but instead you're trying to find, some common ground, make some connections.
Couldn't agree more. I try to scale that for the intake of my law firm. In their training manual, they are supposed to be familiar with every area code. So if it's a 312 area code, is it White Sox or Cubs? 215, is it Pats or Genos? Like everybody in Philly has even the vegans have an opinion on that, right? Like there's nobody that doesn't have an opinion about Pats or Genos. And it may be, no, it's Uncle Sal's, and those guys suck. Those are too commercial. I go to the guy on the West Side, so to me, I get that. So are you coming at the intersection? Are you sitting in on sales trainings? Like, is this like they're doing Sandler training on Tuesday and you come in on Wednesday, or how does this work?
No, most of them, if we're doing the sales training, it's not in conjunction with anybody else's.
You have your own, so you have your own
Yeah, we
sales.
have our own. I mean, we call it, we call it Sell Greatly, and we'll go in. So like tomorrow, I'll teach them how to do social reconnaissance and using publicly available data to literally build a dossier on your prospects. So you'll know, is it Geno's or Pat's or whatever you just referenced?
Well, you may
you
may not even know that, or they might, but like at least you'll know you're not walking into a vegan and asking them about Morton's versus whatever.
Exactly.
Like, you can.
You would be surprised what you can find out about people online. People have no concept of how much they share about themselves online and how much other people share about them. And so, as part of the
but I have a question. Does that change depending on the industry? So in legal, you have some people that are online, but like I'm the kind of not the average guy. There are a lot of people who's it's not a big Instagram crowd. It's limited Facebook, probably family photos, maybe some legal circles. And so you don't get as much comparatively. I'm guessing in the liquor business, it's a much freer spirit. They've had a bunch of that spiced rum, and you meaning do certain industries comport better with that? Obviously, reconnaissance is always good, but do you have an easier time in some industries over others?
Yeah, definitely. Like if you're, targeting younger people in industries that are younger, tech, anything like that. But like what people don't realize is, while yes, the lawyer, they're on it, but they're private, right? Nobody's got their stuff open. But what people don't realize is while you may have your stuff really private and really locked down, your friend may not. And the next thing you know, you're in a selfie at the Cubs game with your friend. So now I know you're a Cubs fan because you got the hat on and the jersey. So I know you're a Cubs fan, not because you told me, but because your friend told me. And that's the piece that people don't always understand.
No, look, I just assume, like, it's a lawyer, take the lawyer side of ours. Anything you put on there is discoverable. I don't care how much you lock it down. Like, sure. A, assuming you get it done right, but B, there's different levels of it. There's different, and that in general, if it's out there, it gets out. So, like, cases have been won and lost. A lot of people screw up their cases, you forget that if you're willing to live in that fishbowl, but like, the flip side of that is we live in a glass bowl, which means, I was prospecting a company today, and I asked for references, and they were giving me a hard time. So I called their references from a publicly facing website. Yeah. And then they got all upset with me. And so all of a sudden, the point is, like, it's tough because we all live in this, exposed world, whether we like it or not.
Oh yeah. And that, to me, again, it goes back to the whole relationship first thing connecting. I mean, the secret is, to make friends with people, to get permission. And, LinkedIn's probably usually the best for that.
But let me ask a blunt question, because obviously it's extremely powerful and it's used all the time by salespeople. How it is getting so spammy, to the point of absurdity, of which I'm now joining in ways that I don't really love. But what are your thoughts? Because Yogi Berra had that saying back in the day, it's so popular, nobody goes there anymore. I'm wondering whether we're going to get to the point where people will again, there are certain B2B spaces that it works beautifully in, but I got to think we're getting close to a tipping point where the spam outweighs and the time needed to sift through it. I wanted to almost do like a documentary or write a book. I was going to respond to the first 100 people that wanted 15 minutes of my time. And if I had spent money on all of those things combined, would I get it? It's like, so anyway, I leave that out. There's my rant. I'll get off my soapbox now, but it kills me. So when you're trying to teach people how to leverage this and utilize it, it's a little trickier than it used to be.
I don't know if it's any, yeah, it's a little trickier, but not really. Cause the little spam email and message you get, to me, it's no different than the crappy cold call you used to get on your phone,
Okay, fair enough.
You have the exact same reaction. At some point in time, salespeople are going to start to figure out that stuff just doesn't work, or it works, but God, it works at such a low conversion number that, you're wasting so much time on outreach that, so you're getting a few conversions. You'd be better off just outreaching less, but higher quality. So I think it's like anything else. The way I always look at it is it's like, no matter what channel you use, if you use the channel respectfully and you really think about what was that person doing 5 seconds before they see your message, pick up your phone call, hear your voicemail, whatever it might be, and try to honor what they were doing and not just, jam yourself into their world, but just be respectful of it. I've actually taken it because it helps you stand out. You're a little bit different. I've really taken to doing a lot of handwritten notes of late.
Very, very, very Jack Daly of you.
Yeah, I mean, nobody does it anymore. It's different. It's kind of like, I remember when I first started my agencies, the first thing I did was I invested in really, really nice colored linen envelopes, so that when we would send something to somebody, I don't care how much mail's on your desk, when a royal blue linen envelope is there, you're going to grab it because it's different. And it's handwritten on the front, not a label.
So you were like lumpy mail for the high-end exec. I love it.
Yeah, and it works. But yeah, I mean, it's like anything else. I mean, I think, it's kind of like LinkedIn groups, like probably, like 5 years ago, 7 years ago, LinkedIn groups were a pretty good place to prospect. And then they just got to be just crap. I mean, there was so much spam, like they were just horrible. And then they just kind of died.
Well, what are a couple of your hacks? What do you like right now?
I think I mostly like, I'm liking LinkedIn, but I like it. I will just kind of look for interesting conversations and try to drop into them. Kind of like the old days of Twitter. I miss the old days of Twitter where you could just drop in on any conversation. It was so much like easier. I'm doing more just like referral based. Hey, can you introduce me to so-and-so?
A warm lead.
Yeah, like a warm lead. And doing more of this, trying to get back out. Like I kind of hit the sidelines there for a while and didn't really speak a whole lot and wasn't doing a whole lot. So I've been getting back more and doing this podcast and being a guest and trying to help create good content for other people's audiences and letting that matriculate, into people then reaching out on LinkedIn and wanting to connect with you or Facebook or whatever it might be. And letting kind of, going out to just sort of, lighten my candle and letting people find me through good content.
That's awesome. Tell us a little bit about the agency. How can people find you, and a little bit more detail about what the ideal clients are for you?
Well, they can find us at conversedigital.com. Ideal clients are those that really really fall into a place where there's a human being involved in the sales process. They don't like cold calling. They do a lot of repeat business. And we do really well with sales teams that sell maybe not a super high-end product, but an educationally oriented product. Your customers doing their homework before they're buying your product or service. Our process, our system, our approach works best in those environments.
Which makes sense, because I look at this. I look at my space, right? So you have this group that just raised $1 gazillion. Scorpion is like a big player in the search space. And their sales is god awful, but it works. It's get on the phone, persistence, gifts, pound the numbers. And, I feel that there's, you look at it and the grass is always greener, but I like the philosophy of build those relationships. But my final question to you is, as an end business owner, okay, I buy into it. I love this. I agree with you. The relationships are better, especially if it's educational and it's not just an impulsive purchase, especially for a repeat player. But there's also this issue of training. They always say you want to train, you train the good people, because, what if you train them and they leave? And it's like, what's worse? You don't train them and they stay. But my question here is, salespeople are ephemeral. A lot of them come and go. How do you, is there a way that goodwill, if you're building something up in the relationship and then that person leaves, how do you scale that, knowing that people are not wedded to a given sales team or company?
Yeah, I would counter, you're asking the wrong question.
Well, I'm sure I am. So that's
based on a faulty assumption of,
okay.
the old saying, if we, insanity is doing the same thing day after day and expecting
Absolutely.
So if the reason salespeople are not wedded is because everybody's using, for the most part, the same old-fashioned volumetric, high volume, always be closing approach to sales.
Understood.
And that tears you up and it wears you out. So if you get into a company where that's working and you're making money, great. Get into a company where it's a little harder, you're not making as much money, well, then you're looking for the jump, because it's like hazard pay, right? You only want to do it if you're making a lot of money. However, as a company, if you switch to a relationship based, like we talk Sell Greatly, where the environment is not about, can you make 10 cold calls today, but can you build 2 good relationships? And it's a nicer, friendlier, if you will, where you're not constantly having to sell your soul to a cold call or doing 100 outreaches on LinkedIn. You're not playing that numbers game. It's a quality over quantity. Creates a much better environment in the workplace.
Okay.
And so that is why the salesperson is going to stay with you, because it's a
understood. It's apples and oranges. The reason you have to incentivize so heavily is because it sucks. And what you're talking about doesn't. This is awesome. But when you're, with that, are there certain widgets being sold where that it is that like you can't afford the relationship piece, and that you are better with more of a transactional, I have this product at this price, do you want it today? Like, is there a line where certain products work really, really well with what you're doing, and there are others that the transaction costs would make the ROI less attractive, even though it would work, you'd make sales, but you may not be able to generate the volume, where it sounds like for you, you've created and cracked a code that gets you indoors. You couldn't get in no matter how many times you just push your horse through it.
Yeah, no, I think like anything else, I mean, there's no one silver bullet for everything. If you're selling a product that is easily demonstrated, solves a very, very painful, well-known, well-understood consumer or buyer need, and you really just need to make me aware of, hey, you're accepting a pain you don't need to accept. I can make that go away. Here it is. It's affordable, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's a numbers game. That's run advertising, get a big sales force, dial for dollars. Because as a buyer, I look at it and go, holy crap, where's that been all my life? Yes, I'll buy. Done. But it's a transaction. Like, you're not, and so, our process doesn't work for that. I mean, it could, but
but I'm saying, but what's harder is up the food chain. It's like what you're saying is, hey, there are no simple solutions. It takes hard work. It takes connections. It takes that. And if you don't seed that, if I don't know if you remember being there with Chauncey Gardner, but like, it was all these gardening metaphors. It's like, if you don't water, then the seeds will not, sprout, and it's like, you're planting seeds. You're basically allowing this to grow and to have a garden rather than, just basically hunting for food whenever you need it.
Yeah, I mean, and I think professional services is a perfect backdrop for where our process works really well, because in professional services, you're hiring the invisible. I can't test drive a lawyer. Once they're hired, they're hired.
Right.
And I'm paying, and I'm either going to get an outcome or I'm not, but I can't test drive it. I can't return it. It's not inventoriable. There's no refunds. Like, it's a trust thing.
Understand, even more so.
The relationship really works.
And cold calls don't work.
No, because if you're a lawyer and you're cold calling, I'm not sure I want you as my lawyer, because I'm wondering, if you're that good, why are you calling me for business? You should have people knocking on your door, not knocking on mine, right? And so, I think in the professional services realm, whether it's lawyer, dentist, doctor, ad guy, whatever, where what you're really selling is an invisible product, and you're selling the promise of a future deliverable, and it's really trust-based, and it's really faith-based that, your customer's buying. This approach works infinitely better, because you start out from a much, much stronger place. And that person already trusts you, already likes you. And then also, if something does go wrong, because you built that relationship before you ever did business with them, it gives you a little permission to stumble. And we all know that can happen in the early days of a new client relationship. You're trying to figure out how to work together and stuff. So that environment thinks it works really great. If I'm selling some widget that just solves a simple problem, probably go for dial for dollar model.
Very cool. Tom, Thank you so much for your time. I hope we get to cross at an in-person conference sooner than later, perhaps in the Big Easy. In fact, I'll be there this fall for one of the first legal conferences back. So,
well, call me. We'll go have a beer. I have a standing invitation to anybody who comes to big conferences in New Orleans. Call me, and always happy to go pop a beer and have a talk.
Well, I appreciate it. Take it easy, Tom.
Take care. Bye.
Thank you for tuning in to the SEO Insider with Seth Price. Be sure to check back next week for fresh insights into building your brand's online presence. Episodes are available to stream directly on Blue Shark Digital's website.